So the Red Trolley is a beer that it's got a long, rich history with Karl Strauss Brewing Company. It was the first Christmas beer that we brewed back in 1989, and it's just become more and more popular over the years. And now it's actually our best-selling beer. It eclipsed the Amber Lager, and it had a great year last year, 2010.
Gold medal.
It won gold medal at both the GABF and the World Beer Cup, and in the Irish Red category. This beer has a nice sort of dark cream-colored head. You know, we don't hop it, or we don't actually carbonate it too aggressively. We like people to taste the flavor. It's got a nice rich red color. We use two different types of caramel malts on this, C60 and Caramel 80. And so when you smell it, you get, I think, more malt than you do hops. It's a pretty sweet, malty beer.
You definitely get the caramel.
Yeah, it comes across. You get that caramel, that toffee-like flavor. But you also pick out some of the other malts that are in there. It's got a little bit of Munich malt in there. It's got some Carapils malt in there. So it's got this firm sort of toastiness that's mingled in there with the caramel flavor.
So, like, how do I pick out the Munich malt smell from the other malt? What is that? What
Munich,
sort of distinguishes
it's a
it?
difficult flavor to describe, Munich malt, but I kind of describe it as a slightly burnt toast or biscuit-like flavor. It's a really sturdy, you know, malt flavor. Some brewers say it's sort of a slight melanoidin kind of flavor, which is, I guess for the layman, it's described as a slightly harsh, maybe tannic flavor, although this beer is far from harsh. Those flavors are all sort of mingled together. I'd say it's a medium-bodied beer. You definitely get that malt, you know, that firm maltiness, but all of that maltiness is sort of underpinned by a delicate hop flavor that's in there too. We use a lot of Willamette hops in this beer, and Willamettes they're a triploid seedling of Fuggles, and so they're very much like Fuggles, which are really earthy and herbal sort of hops, and so, you know, when you drink that, you get that sort of earthiness in the finish too, which I think goes really nicely with the malts that we're tasting in there. This is a West Coast IPA, American IPA. Actually, the West Coast IPA has now sort of become what other people consider a double IPA, I guess. And some people actually might consider this beer a sessionable IPA, but it's, you know, 7% alcohol, it's 70 BU. This is a pretty big beer, and it's just super hop forward. You get a lot of nice fresh hop aroma out of this. We really brew it with a lot of Chinooks, which are pine-like hops, but then we turn around and dry hop the heck out of it with some Cascades and Amarillos again on this to get a lot of that fruitiness in there too. So it's not quite as pine-like as it was before.
No.
Now it's
I get a little honey on the nose and in the mouth too.
the honey is from the malts that we use on it. We still use a little bit of Caramel 40 in there, but we had Caramel 60 in there too, which kind of, you know, gave it a little bit too sweet of a malt flavor. And the Caramel 40 actually, I think, was a great transition, a great malt to use in place of the C60, because it allows the hops to shine through quite a bit more. So this beer now comes in at 70 IBU, 7% alcohol. It's, to us now, a solid IPA, and this beer, since we reformulated it the last time, we can't brew enough of it. It's just going through the roof. We brewed this beer last year for the first time, and it sort of happened, you know, we just kind of went with something that happened. We had one of our salespeople come in and visit us, and he, of course, works for a malt company. And he's always trying us on new malts that they're playing with, new malts that come up, and, you know, and he brought in a sample of Moravian malt. And he said, you know, we happened into a small quantity of this malt, and by small I mean maybe, I don't know, 20,000 pounds or something. And he said, this is really, really nice malt. It'd be really cool if, you know, somebody bought this up or whatever. And I kind of looked at that malt and we tasted it, and it just tasted so good. And I said, we've got to do a beer with this malt. And one of my favorite beers of all time is Pilsner Urquell. And I was fortunate enough to taste Pilsner Urquell unfiltered straight from the brewery at a keg once at one of the craft brewers conferences. And that flavor just it has remained in my memory. It was just such a good beer. And I said, well, wouldn't it be cool if we took that, you know, Pilsner Urquell and kind of upped it a little bit and sort of made a Pilsner Urquell on steroids. It smells like
totally different,
like Pilsner Urquell, just, you know, that Saaz hop flavor and aroma. And we used Bohemian lager yeast in this beer too, and we lagered it for a good 4 weeks, and you get a little bit of the sulfur from the lager yeast as well. We lagered it nice and cold.
Yeah, that is good.
That turned out exactly the way we wanted it. This year is just, last year was really good, this year is even better. It's nice and dry, but it's got a really firm, you know, crisp malt backbone to it. And heck, I think it's 7% alcohol.
7.5?
7.5, yeah.
I think it finished a little bit high this year.
Wow.
We, like I said, we dried it out a little bit. We used a lower mash temperature, and that boosted the alcohol up a little bit. And then we added a lot more late kettle Saaz hops to it, and then we dry hopped the heck out of it with Saaz as well. So it's really, it's a Saaz bomb. The Black Ball is a pretty new beer to us. It's this was the third time we've brewed it this year. The first time we brewed it started out downtown as kind of a pilot brew, a test batch. One of our younger brewers, Nolan Clark, said, I'd like to brew sort of a version of our Big Barrel Double IPA, but I want to use Belgian yeast. And by the way, how do you think it would turn out if I used the same herbs that we use in the Saison, which is curacao orange peel and coriander and some grains of paradise? And I said, go for it. Do it up. So he went downtown and brewed a 10-barrel batch, which to us is kind of a pilot brew. And the beer turned out really good. It was really fruity, phenolic. It had orange. It had the coriander going on. It was, but it was like almost 11% alcohol. It was like 10.7. It was like jet fuel. Well, we toned down the alcohol a little bit. You know, it's 9.5% alcohol as opposed to 10.7 or whatever. Which is still pretty, you know, beefy.
Yeah.
It's a big beer, and but it's a Belgian IPA. Really could qualify as a Belgian double IPA because of its alcohol content and its hop, you know, its hop rating. But you can see it's a nice, rich golden color. Pours with a big head. You smell it, man. You get just a blast of hops.
Yeah.
Boom. It's huge. We used some Nelson Sauvin hops in the dry hopping of this beer. Nelson Sauvins are grown in New Zealand, and we've been contracting these hops for several years. And they're called Nelson Sauvin because they have kind of a Sauvignon Blanc, or they're supposed to have a Sauvignon Blanc kind of character. I think it just has this outrageous fruitiness. And that's the cool thing about these New Zealand hops, is that they're so fruity that it masks some of the bitterness that's contributed there. You know, you can have a beer that's 95 BU, like this, that tastes like maybe 65 BU, you know, and it's so drinkable and so fruity. It's just outrageous. And then you combine that with the fruit that we actually, you know, the orange peel that's in there and the coriander and then the Belgian yeast.
Right.
And there's just so much going on with this beer that you can't even describe it all.